Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Terry, and thank you for joining us tonight for our monthly edition of TAM. Over the past year, we've been very fortunate to have heard from such great voices that reach each and every one of us along this journey. Tonight, we're excited and blessed to have our TAM dads that are so committed, they are willing to share their stories and perspectives with us. Robert has been on a journey with his son's addiction for more than 10 years, dealing with the entire gamut of situations that addiction brings to our lives, including currently being the guardian of his child, who he's had her entire life. Fred, on the other hand, has suffered the unfathomable loss of his child and understands dealing with addiction, the danger of the if only, and the grief that comes with such a traumatic loss. So, Robert and Fred, thank you for being here, and we look forward to listening and learning from you. And the floor is all yours.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Robert, you want to start the show?
I'd like you to.
Okay. All right. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Fred DeMarco. I was, as I tell people, voluntold into the opioid epidemic March 9th, 2015. I was the poster child dad of stigma and ignorance. You know, I was that dad that when my son was suffering from the chronic brain disease of addiction, that it was a weakness, that you could quit, that you could get over it. And I was that guy that said, you know, that you would steal from your father, from lie to your mother. And I lacked the understanding and education. And then over the years, it's been 6 years, I have spent a lot of time listening and learning and educating myself. And I know a little bit more about the chronic brain disease of addiction, but it had come at too high of a cost. I spend the last 6 years trying to educate and reduce the stigma and ignorance that's out there. We probably all know that last year, now we're at 93,000. I believe in 2015 we lost the recorded number was 72,000, and now we're at 93,000. And we have gone to Narcan, we have gone to MAT, we have gone to dual diagnosis, and all of these things we have come up with, but yet the numbers keep getting higher. Personally, I attribute it to fentanyl, which was a game changer. And I used March 9th, 2015, because at 1:15 a.m., my son Adam burst into my bedroom and he was screaming, you know, oh my God, oh my God. And if you knew my son Adam, I figured there was probably a bug in his room. But then he said the words Nick. And at that time I knew. And my son Adam found his twin brother, Nicholas Jordan DeMarco, dead on our bathroom floor from a fentanyl laced heroin overdose. And my son had just gotten out of a rehab, Nick, and the counselor I was very close with recommended that I get Narcan. Back then it was a prescription. And I went to my family doctor requesting Narcan, and he denied it to me because in his mind he said, I'm not going to give you a silver bullet. And my thought was, what do you think I'm going to do? Go to my son and say, hey, look, I've got Narcan, so you can continue to use. That I had signed up for a group called Project Dawn, Death Avoidance with Narcan, that dispenses Narcan once you've taken the training. And that was going to be on a Wednesday. Well, my son left us on a Monday. So I have to look at myself and ask myself, if I would have had that Narcan, would that have made a difference? And again, it's part of this stigma and ignorance that's out in this world that makes us not get further ahead in being able to help those people that suffer. And being a dad, I've worked with many, many groups over the years. I've worked with the DOJ, the DEA, the FBI. I've taught at multiple high schools and multiple recovery places. And most of the groups I work with are predominantly women. And I get asked, could you speak to my husband? Could you talk to my boyfriend? Because he has shut down. He won't talk about it. And to reference the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, yes, we are wired differently on an average scale. We look at it as it's a weakness that we failed. And it's very difficult for men to look in the mirror and accept and then understand that it wasn't a failing on our child's part and it wasn't a failing on our part. We may have made the wrong, and I don't even want to use the word wrong. We may have made a different choice. But until we understand the chronic brain disease of addiction and learn their drug of choice and educate ourselves, even then, the result may be something like what has happened to myself and too many people throughout this country. So, in dealing with the fathers that have a hard time with their emotions, I usually tell the mothers and the girlfriends, here's my number, or I can put you in contact with someone else that has had the similar effect. Because a lot of times we who have lost somebody, it's unless you're part of this club, it's very difficult to find somebody who can truly empathize with us and understand what we're going through. So my goal is to try to minimize the number of people that join in this club. And that's through, education and eradicating the ignorance. Never wrote a poem in my life. The day my son left, I wrote my first poem, at which point then poetry is what I use to get my message out about the addiction. I take addiction and I look at it through different ways, meaning I'll write a poem from the eyes of someone who suffers from addiction. I'll write from a parent's point of view. I'll write from a first responder's point of view. I'll write from someone who suffers from stigma and ignorance. And just to get the point across from a multifaceted way. And that's my venue. That's how I try to help get the message out. And again, there's many paths, and not one is the right one. It's the one that's best, that fits you. So you find what works for you and go forth. I do a lot of grief counseling as well, because again, I have suffered the loss of my son. And anyone who out there who has my condolences, I truly can empathize with your loss, and I'm sorry. So I guess because you want to talk to a dad's point of view, we're wired differently. We don't like to talk about our feelings. For some reason, we were grown up to think that it's a weakness. I cry often. I cry in public. I cry at work, and people look and I go, it's okay. I go, I'm just crying. I go, I'm thinking about my son. And they look at me, I go, it's okay. Because I have equated my pain to how much I love my son. And, it's not something that you get accustomed to. It's not something you get over. The way I equate it, I say the brain and the heart have to come to a truce, is my personal analogy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's just the road of life. It's never straight and narrow. And that's a little bit of what I do and who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish in this world.
How awesome is that? Thank you. So my story is a little bit different. My son Josh Rosendahl uh, began his addiction probably maybe when he was 12 or 13, and I really never caught on for whatever reason. Life handed me a different set of cards. At the time, I was a single dad with 4 kids, doing my best just to survive, just to put food on the table and pay the rent and do all uh, and to do all the other stuff that needed to be done. And so I may have overlooked some things, and I really sympathize with what Fred says. Is I wonder a lot if I would have done things different, if things were different. Maybe this would have been different. But Josh and I have been through quite a journey. I know that it has affected our entire family. It is certainly a family disease. I've heard that a few times out here. So my way of dealing with all of this has been to educate myself. And one of the reasons that I joined the Addict's Dad probably I think 2 or 3 years ago now, and I quickly took on the role Kat, I'm talking. I quickly took on the role because I wanted to educate myself and learn more about how other dads feel. And in my chat room and even in my classroom, I use words that exactly like Fred said. I don't think many dads say, peace and love. I love you. Thank you for putting that out there. And so I put that out in our room all the time because, again, we are wired different. We're wired so, I came from a crazy background. I served in the Army for close to 8 years, and that's crying and emotions aren't part of that. And what the hell is all of this happening? It's not normal. It wasn't normal, but it has become normal because I've educated myself about what my son's addiction is and what it isn't. I think the number one thing that I take away from all of this for me is, and I see it a lot in our room, is enabling. That has been the absolute uh, hardest thing for me to accept and to put into place. My son's choices are his choices and his consequences. They're not mine. Um, and that's tough, you know. As we sit here, my one of the choices is laying over in the bed next to me, um, because both mom and dad in this situation are addicts. I have custody of their kids, and I have raised them since the day they were born. They came out. They came out. What exposed. So at some point during um, Catalina's process, she was exposed in womb to this stuff. So it was a very tough road in the beginning. And now it's the greatest blessing. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning of the chat. Um, you know, she is the energy that I look to every day. Um, she sleeps literally right next to me. Um, and somehow I think that in this process, that was God's plan. So how awesome. She's talking now. So that's really all I have. Sadly, I kind of fell short a little bit on time, but for me, that's the number one thing that I've taken away is A, to give back, and B, to not enable. I have to give back to this process. Just like Fred said, I have to be out there, and I educate myself, and I do everything I can to educate others that are suffering in this world of addiction. It is a very powerful thing, And we as with grandparents, parents of those, we just have to continue to love unconditionally, and we have to absolutely give back and not enable. That's still one of the things that I struggle with. Um, Sometimes, other times not so much. Um, so that's where I am. I've done this now for um, more than 10 years. Kat came along, and we're here. We're doing great things together. She just started preschool, and she has. I hope that I've done my best. Not I hope. I know I have done my best to make sure that the life that she has had and will continue to have is not touched um, by addiction. And sometimes that's very challenging to say, no, you can't come over here and be with your kid because you're under the influence. That's not okay for her to see that. Uh, so there you go.
Well, we thank you both so much for, gosh, just your time, but your willingness to come into this room and just share. And obviously, you're in the same boat we're all in, and it's always nice to hear another perspective because I think sometimes, as women mostly, that come into this room primarily, do question, how is my significant other handling this or feeling this? And I know it's a very personal thing. I know that even among women, it's a very personal thing in how they handle and deal with things. And you both touched on it. I think one of the greatest challenges we all have is enabling, because it feels so wrong to say no to your child, and
Yeah.
that's just something we all have to work on together and to stay strong with, and to realize that we're really not helping when we do that. So I think we can all raise our hand to admit to that. So,
Yeah.
And
yep, yep,
you
yep.
talk about the enabling. So profiling a little bit, usually the spouse, the wife is enabling and the husband's the tough love. And when you're not on the same page, it sends mixed signals and then it causes a rift between the partners.
Yep, absolutely.
That that
Yes.
that
She's
is all.
beautiful, Robert.
Thank you.
She's beautiful.
That's her. Yeah.
Oh.
So that has showed up in my relationship now. I remarried after just a few years back, and my wife and I don't quite see, or not quite on the same page um, in terms of enabling. As my son has made some less than awesome choices, and has landed himself in jail or another rehab or another hospital stay. Not often, I don't put money on his books. I don't bail him out. And my wife is still wondering why that's like that, and she doesn't quite understand the whole process yet. She's just now getting um, into the process. Um, so in yeah, so it's been a challenge for our
Mhm.
relationship, and has caused a great deal of stress. But um, as we do this longer, which is crazy, uh, she has gotten better at it, and she understands. I turn my phone off at night, and I don't answer it pretty much no matter what. It just is the way that
Mhm.
I have chosen to do that. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have to reach what works and what doesn't. And it kind of leads us into our first question here. You kind of touched on it, Robert, a little bit. And it says, have you and your spouse or spouses come to a place of agreement on how to handle boundaries?
no, we
No.
have not. So in I have 4 children of my own that are all my children, and as I remarried, my wife has one, and her daughter is kind of struggling with it a little bit. I can see it and I can feel it because obviously I've lived it before, and oftentimes what my wife doesn't doesn't want to accept it or doesn't want to see her daughter in that light, and I get that. But also, it's a struggle because I see her doing things that she shouldn't be doing, and it has caused some stress in our marriage. So sadly, we're not there yet in terms of
Work in
finding.
progress.
It's definitely a work in progress, and very stressful at times. Very, very full of.
I bet.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure. So what do you think if your addict is angry at you if their enabling father passed away? What do you
Passed
think
away
if
from.
your addict is angry at you if their enabling father passed away?
Well, why did the father pass away? Is what I would like to know. But the addict will be angry because I would think the enabling father is gone. So now they don't have that resource anymore.
Perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they lack that resource, and now they have to find someone to blame. And it's very difficult to look into the mirror and blame that person. So it's easier to
And she
blame
did
the
mention
mother or
that
your father.
he died of cancer. So there's probably some just heartache also involved there, with
There you
dealing
go.
with that. But
So they're
mhm.
dealing with loss, and I truly believe we as Americans are not educated, trained, coached on how to deal with loss. It's always, you don't talk about death, but it's an integral part of life. But
Sure.
we are not trained, educated, at least in American culture, on how to deal with death. We put it aside. It was very interesting.
Mhm.
I come from an immigrant background. My parents were are Sicilian, and when my son passed, it was very interesting on how my Sicilian family accepted the death, and in a way that, okay, he's now dead, and we need to accept that. Whereas the Americans, wanted to poor me, pity me, look at me, and what do I do? But I think, as a society here in America, we don't know how to deal with it. We haven't been educated, trained, coached. And with this particular person, again, I think it's a combination, as you said, dealing with the loss of your father and not knowing how to deal in a healthy fashion with that grief. And then again, you lost your cash cow.
Yeah.
You lost your
Mhm.
resource.
So for me,
Yeah.
there's an interesting twist to that. As I said, when Josh and I's journey began, uh, my mom and dad took care of Josh. My mother and father, his grandma and grandpa, they were the absolute best. When I went to work, they came to the house, and my mom and dad would watch them almost endlessly. My mom would come down to my house and get their clothes all ready and etc. And when my mom passed away from cancer a few years back, that really shook Josh, and it kind of sent him back into uh, a cycle of addiction. And then just recently, just this year in January, my father passed away, and that also kind of spun him into another round of addiction because what you said is exactly right, Fred. We don't know how to process, and Josh certainly didn't know how to process feelings and emotions as is his two primary enablers, caretakers, mom and dad passed away. It really struck him hard, and the third layer is if that wasn't enough. Shortly after my mom passed away, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I have been battling kidney cancer now for 8 years. And so he's always kind of wondering, when is that shoe going to fall? When is that other foot going to fall? And now I'm going to do my best to not let
Yeah,
that
I'll
happen.
hear it for you.
So
Sorry.
there was that. Josh is always no. You're Josh was always kind of. I sense it. when I start sneezing or coughing, and when COVID came up, how is that going to affect me in my journey with cancer and my mom and dad's passing? And Josh has had a lot of loss. Our family has been through the ringer, but again, at the end of the day, it is unconditional love that has got us through. I still love him, and I think that's something that we miss a lot. We have to love the person and hate the addict. We have to love that person, and make sure that they know that. But again, also with the clear, very, very clear. My kids hate when I say it. Your choices equal your consequences, and we live that here. Even with Catalina now, when she chooses to not go and do what she wants, there's consequences for that. And whether it's addiction or it's simply playing on her iPad, there are consequences, both good and bad, for choices that we make.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions. I don't see anything else, but I tell y'all what, guys, this was great. And we can't thank you enough for taking your time. And, basically, we're all parents and we all love and we all feel the same, but there's a difference in how we process. And so it helps us to be
True.
able to hear from you. A lot of us, I'm speaking for myself now. I don't have a significant other, and it's different because I get to make my choices. I get to set my boundaries, my rules, do it my way. And maybe that's why I'm single. Um, but I can tell with my son's father, he doesn't process the same and doesn't mean anything any differently as far as his love for him. It's just different. And
Right.
so it's important to hear that. And I tell you what, thank you both, because Fred, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, it's heartbreaking every time I hear a story of losing someone, and but I appreciate all your giving back and everything that you're doing to help others. And Robert, you too, your
Thank you.
dedication here with the group and in your own family. I mean, it's just amazing to watch, and such a beacon for so many people to be able to listen to you and see you both and share with us. So we appreciate you being here with us tonight and giving us your time. So we appreciate you very much. Thank y'all.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
for
Good
having
evening. Have
us.
a great evening.